Okay, I'm pretty sure this isn't working yet. Something's happened on YouTube. I just thought that I would have a go at this. So this is a practice run for going live. Oh, look, there's a picture up. Awesome. So I have my cup of coffee. It's morning. It's not too early in the morning. I'm a restricted lawyer in Western Australia. I'm currently not working, so I'm not supervised. So I was about to start a law firm with a friend of mine, but things happened in my life that quite stressful, and I wasn't going to be able to put in the hours required as a full-time lawyer. Now, when I say full-time lawyer, officially it's 7.5 hours a day. Makes you full-time if you're working that 5 days a week. Now, I don't have any problem with that, but I call that part-time, because to be a lawyer and working full-time, you're realistically putting in 10 to 12 hours a day every day, and you're putting in lots of hours on the weekend as well. So I knew that the workload that we would have would be in the vicinity of 12 hours a day, probably 6 days a week. And with everything that's now happening in my life, I really couldn't do that to my friend, and so I had to pull out and say, I can't really do the business as such. But I'm still unemployed and I still have to earn money. So being painfully aware of how the legal system works with, you can't give legal advice. And it's sometimes a fine line between what's legal advice and what's practical advice. And because I do want to practice, and I'm currently looking at perhaps starting up a law firm and having only 1 or 2 clients at a time, because I know that I can meet the 7.5 hours a day, 5 days a week that's required to get to my unrestricted practitioner certificate. So that's kind of what I'm working on. But in the meantime, I do have to get some sort of income happening. So I thought, if I get contacted by a lot of people who are self-representing, and what they're after isn't really legal advice. What they're after is, how do I do this? How do I deal with this? And is there somewhere where I can go to get the help that I need? So I thought a really good way of maybe getting a bit of income generated and helping a lot more people than I can one-on-one. Because if I'm speaking for 2 hours on the phone, and that's not unusual to have these conversations for 1 or 2 hours on the phone that I'm not getting paid for, I could give the kind of information I've been asked for, which, as I say, it's not legal advice, it's just practicalities, If I could do that one-to-many, then I could help more people. Some of the people who contact me have got family law matters, others have got will matters, and then there are the ones who've got the banking stuff. Now, I came to be a lawyer because we were screwed over by our bank. It's the only polite way of putting it. We lost everything. We were on track for the hubby to retire or semi-retire at 55. And then, just work casual, part-time, and sort of enjoy life. And after the bank took everything, we're now looking at, both of us have to work till at least 75 just to make up our losses. So I did a law degree to, how the hell did we get screwed over? I mean, the regulators were supposed to help us. No regulation going on. The legal system was supposed to help us. I now understand how it happened, because I have a very low opinion of lawyers, and the Legal Practice Board knows it. everybody knows my opinion of the legal profession. I have met some awesome lawyers. They care about their clients. They care about their clients' costs, and they do try to do the best job that they can with a mind to their clients' financial situation. But end of the day, it is really expensive to get legal services because of how the system works. And it's the more laws you have and the more complex it gets. And at least the banks do this wonderful stuff so that it's really hard to figure out where the fraud comes in. And they tend to hide the evidence of the fraud. I can tell you, we had the evidence of the fraud and a lawyer didn't plead fraud. And in hindsight, I know that he should have pleaded the fraud. We ended up suing the bank for damages because the judge had pretty much said, you are going to lose everything, sue the bank for damages. And the bank settled our matter out of court and we were paid a pittance. So that's why we still got to keep going. But at least they didn't bankrupt us. At least it was settled early. I mean, I know one bloke who's gone through this for 30 odd years and he's finally had a win. I know a couple who have gone through, it's been a bloody long time. They started about the time that we did, but we settled 8 years ago and they're now, they won their appeal against the judgment last year. So now they're going through it all again. And it's like, and they had legal representation for the trial. And I was at that trial. I heard it. I couldn't believe the judgment that came out. So, one day I would like to, do a live stream where I talk about that judgment where, in my humble opinion, the judge had to really do word gymnastics to fit the predetermined outcome that he decided he wanted to have. And thankfully it was all overturned, so, but they had something like 96 grounds of appeal, which that's a phenomenal number. Usually you're struggling to find 3, or at least, so it goes. Excuse me drinking my coffee, but I really do have to have a drink. Now, I hope you don't get offended by swearing. And, my defence is I like cursey words. I'm kind of inclined to, when I get really upset. People know when I'm really upset because the C word comes out. I hate the C word. But by God, that one comes out when I'm really upset. I've got a C word name for the next door neighbour because, noise. I'm sure he's got a business from home, but no one cares. So, I'm going to put on my happy face because this isn't about my neighbours. This is about what I can do for people who are self-representing. And, the background I'm giving is, how did I come to be an expert? What makes me think that I can help self-represented people? Now, I would never have dreamed of self-representing. It never crossed my mind. Not once did I think, you know what, I can do this better than a lawyer who's, So I have a lot of respect for self-represented litigants, but I see a lot of them fall down because of the way the system is so complicated, all of the different acts that are in there, and, they trip up on some of the basics. And they have their cases thrown out. And the ones that get done the most are the ones that fall into the pseudo-law gurus' clutches. So the pseudo-law in Western Australia, they're called the constitutionalists. Around the world, they're known as the freemen of the land. And they do some weird shit. And people think, just do this argument. You can't hear this because, the Constitution of Australia has been knackered, and so therefore you're not sitting in a real court, and I'm thinking, but you've got a real case. With all of your evidence, if you just took the bank to court, or whoever it was to court, on the real evidence, chances are you'll win. It's like, it might take a long time because there's, and I would like to cover that in webinars, different webinars for different topics. Because if you get the wrong judges, a lot of judges worked for the really big firms that represent the banks. So there's an automatic bias, in my opinion. Judges are supposed to leave their biases behind, but we're human. And when I say we're human, we're all human. And judges are just like us. They're not other. They're not, they're not God-given anything. They've just managed to position themselves and apply themselves so that they would end up on the track to being a judge. It takes a lot of hard work. And when I did my PLT, which is your practical legal training, I worked at the magistrates court. And, you work with magistrates, and I worked with some judges. Now, it was only, 5 weeks? So we're not talking a long time. We're not talking, I was entrenched in the system. But by God, these people are dedicated to what they do. So I sometimes get my back up when self-represented litigants go off about judges and magistrates being nothing but arseholes. That's not true. Sometimes your legal argument fails, and that's where you need to get legal advice. Now, one of the webinars I want to do is teach people how to put their information together and how to put together a chronology with all of the evidence you've got, so that a lawyer can quickly get into it. Because the more time your lawyer has to spend reading documents to see if you've even got a case, the more it costs. Now, it's going to cost you, for a junior, to look over your documents and that, and to put your documents into order, and to give a synopsis of what's going on to the senior lawyer. That's going to cost you $330 an hour. And a junior lawyer is still learning. They're not across on everything. Some are absolutely brilliant right from the get-go. I mean, if you have a junior lawyer who's a child of lawyers and was brought up in the legal system, their attitude is immediately different, that they approach it differently. So there's a lot to be said for, the family affair. But you don't know what the background is. You don't know, you don't know what training they're getting at work. So the more that you do up front, the better the results you'll get. So I want to go through that. Like, is it even worthwhile seeing a lawyer? Because some people, when I was working, they would come in and say, I want to sue so-and-so, what are my chances? And you sort of look at it and I'm there, you've got a grievance, but it's not a legal issue. You're upset and they've done the wrong thing, but there isn't a law against it. You can't say to, this section of this act, you've breached that, so, pay up. And sometimes you've got a really good case. It's obvious. But you can't afford to have a lawyer represent you, because even with a win, it's going to cost you so much money. So does that mean you shouldn't sue? Well, no, but maybe you can, when you get the legal advice, you can get into a law firm that gives the legal advice in, they call it unbundled services. So you come in and you sort of say, what are my prospects of success? So they look at your case and say, well, you've got this option, and this option, in our opinion, you would be better off going with option B. But, it's going to be a long drawn out thing and it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. And then you might be able to get the same lawyer to then, if you start the process, they can check your documents. Have you put the right claim in? And, have you got the right law that you're relying on? The affidavit in support, is it a good affidavit? Now, anyone can write an affidavit, but I have seen 75-page affidavits that I've had to read as somebody who's straight out of law school. And you sort of go, what? Because there's no order, there's no headings. So you can write your affidavit and get a lawyer to look over it. I think that's a good way to spend your limited funds to get this done. And I mean, I would love to do a webinar on, well, how would you put together an affidavit ready for a lawyer to check over, so that the lawyer only has to maybe say, this bit here is, that's not going to fly. You may as well take it out or reword it so that it's just putting context around something. I've seen a lot of really wordy affidavits that go over and over and over the same point. That doesn't add anything to it. It's kind of like you're assuming that whoever's reading it, they haven't understood it the first 15 times you've said it. Now, lawyers aren't dumb. I mean, I know that I think, anyone can become a lawyer because I did. But generally, there's a lot of things that you have to know to put together an affidavit. And, the rules of evidence. You have to know the rules of evidence because, what are you adding with this affidavit? So, and, brevity. Don't write a 300-line paragraph. Keep your paragraphs short and keep them under the same topic, and then move on to the next topic. And you've already covered everything about the other topic, so you don't have to bring it into the next one. If it's linked, just say, and this links to, XYZ in this way. Just to, you can put that together. So that's the kind of thing that I would like to do. I would like to do just on live streams and, just live streams, talk about certain case law. Some of that's really interesting to me, seeing the reasoning, especially when you do an appeal and you read the dissenting opinions, like, oh, I don't like that, so this is the reason I don't like it. So you get to understand what the legal reasoning is behind decisions. And, not all, if you're going to do research, and this is what I was doing as a law student, it's not really a good idea to just broadly research on a case and then quote the case. You've got to read it. And then, is it a good decision? And does it support my side? And I know that you would think that only law students would do that, but remember that judgment I was talking about where, the judge was doing word gymnastics to get his point across. He was referring to cases that had nothing to do with the ruling he was given. Didn't fit the facts. Didn't support the argument of the bank in any way, shape or form. And he just threw them in there. Maybe he thought that self-represented litigants wouldn't understand. But, judges are human, I suppose. And I don't know. But the reason I can say it is because his judgment was overturned. So, the Supreme Court of Appeal didn't like his reasoning, thought that he was a bit faulty. So that's good. That's good for the people who got the right thing, the right outcome, or at least got a chance to really present their case from the beginning. They've got all of those, they've got so many judgments where that they can read through what was thought about, like the legal reasoning behind some of it. And I mean, they know where some of it was wrong. So they should be able to put together a really, really good case. So, and I mean, they also help people, but you get to the point where you get really tired of giving lots of people lots of advice and not getting paid for it. I mean, they paid a lot for the knowledge they've got. They've paid it in blood, sweat and tears, and all of the stress. So is it fair? No. Well, she's doing different training now to actually help in a very specific way and get paid for it. So she will be using her knowledge for her own benefit, which I get a bit frustrated with everybody wanting something for free. It's as frustrating as lawyers who charge a real lot of money for very little work and, for dodgy advice because they don't know the area of law that they're advising in, which you'd think that wouldn't happen, but it does. It happens a lot. And then I want to use the Lady Rosa Legal Briefs channel to just post short videos on different topics, like, do a few videos on standing. Do you have standing to bring the case, or is there a different plaintiff? Are you the right defendant? And lawyers can get this wrong. So I was working at a law firm, and it wasn't until it was 3 or 4 months after the senior lawyer started working on this case that it turns out that a question was raised by the magistrate. I think it was the magistrate saying, have we even got the right defendant? And maybe we need to have a think about it. And it turns out that the lawyer suing hadn't identified the correct defendant, and the lawyer I was working for hadn't picked it up, because in a busy law firm you really are busy. It's you do this, and you've got so many things on because it's the only way to make money. I mean, overheads for a law firm can be massive, which is why I want to do my law firm wholly online, and I want to have limited clients so that I can give them the best documents to give to a barrister that I can instruct. I'm happy to instruct barristers, and a barrister's only as good as the instructing lawyer, because if the lawyer can't get the information out of the client, I know that in our case, I argued with my lawyer and I said, I don't want to sign this affidavit because it makes it sound like I don't know who was who. And I was bullied into signing that affidavit, and when I tried to report it, you're allowed to do that as a lawyer, apparently. It still shits me to this day, and this happened in 2009, so you can imagine how happy I was about this affidavit. And the lawyer didn't understand the case, really had no clue. And, barrister is my niece's godfather, so you would have thought that barrister would have been on top of things, but apparently he was having a nervous breakdown at the time, so it kind of got a bit dodgy. But anyway, don't really want to talk about that. He was suing me for defamation at one point, so cheers to the law and all the dodgy things going on. Chances are they'll pull me up in front of the Legal Practice Board, and the Legal Profession Complaints Committee will have their say about me. Not saying that all lawyers are wonderful, but I don't think I should say it about all lawyers. Not all lawyers are wonderful, even though I know some really good ones. And if people ask, I will recommend those lawyers for work that, if people come and ask me for legal advice, I do pass them on to lawyers that I know are really good at their job and they care and that have a really good policy on legal fees, because it's important. If you're going to pay top dollar for someone, you want to know that you do get top service. And I mean, these people, I know some barristers who charge less than some very ordinary senior lawyers. So, it depends on how you think you're going to make money. I'd really rather make money because people give me money for doing a good job on all of the free stuff I do. I'd really rather have Patreon supporters than, working as a lawyer, just, overcharging. Still, not all lawyers overcharge. Most don't. It's just a bit hard. Oh dear. Sorry about the puppy. He's had his surgery and now he's heard a door slam somewhere. So we're just going to wait for him to settle down. Oi! Oliver! Come on! No, he's not going to settle down. I'll just open the door for him. What you doing? Hey, you come over here. You come over here and talk to the people. Then, I don't know, is there anyone watching? I don't think there's anyone watching. Look at that face. Oh, what a poor baby. Look, say hello to people. Hello, people. Hello, people. So he's my big protector. He thinks he's a Rottweiler. So he goes off. Don't you, baby? Look at this thing. He's still got to have this on for ages. But he really does need it on because, he tries to chew all the stitches. So, anyway, sorry about the interruption. It happens. He hasn't had his breakfast yet, but only because he doesn't want it. Anyway, so the videos on Lady Rosa Legal Briefs, as I say, just short 10-minute videos, 10-15 minutes explaining different concepts. So, trying to pull this together so that, as I say, I would like to retire before I'm 75. Would be really good. Would be really good to replace an income. Although it wouldn't be hard to replace the income that I had working as a lawyer. I had people going off at me about the fees, about how much they were charged. And to some of them, because their attitude was really bad, I said, you do know I'm only getting paid $25 an hour for this. And they didn't believe me. They thought I was lying. Yeah, I wasn't lying. No need to lie about, the peanuts I was paid. But that's all right. It's across the industry. That's what they do. If you ever want to know what an industry is like, you look at how they treat their employees. And I don't get it. I really don't. It's like, do you really have to make that much profit out of somebody's work and not pay them? I've got a HEC stat that is through the roof. I ended up doing a master's in majoring in family law, and I did some business and wills units because the boss had said he wanted me to work in family law and do wills, and I hadn't studied those at uni because I had zero interest in them. So I did them as part of my master's, and still don't want to do family law, but I'm happy to help people think through like their documents and that. Again, no legal advice obviously, but most of the family law stuff isn't the law anyway. It's how do you get over the other side and all the other side's bullshit. It's I know 5 people personally going through family court at the moment, and what they're dealing with all of the lies and the bullshit from the other side. And it's like, why don't we have something about, doing perjury in an affidavit? And why are these people getting away with outright lies in an affidavit when you can prove it's a lie? Oh no, we won't worry about it. It's about time you're worried about it. I get a bit. I'm really emotional about lying, and that the lies that are misdirection. Like, you just don't answer the question, so you're not lying, but you're not answering the question. I don't like that. I'm probably too honest, but you know what? I'd really rather be honest. And I was told by the barrister when we were suing the bank that she wouldn't put me on the stand because I'm too honest. It's like, what? Seriously? I couldn't go on the stand if it went to trial because I'm too honest. Because I do take some of the blame of what happened to us. I mean, shit a brick, I made some of those decisions. But I also trusted the advice I was given, and I didn't know that the bank manager was going to have a huge financial gain from it. If I'd known that they were going to financially benefit personally, so their advice wasn't impartial, then I would never have done it. It's as simple as that. Because we got legal advice, we got financial advice, we got advice everywhere, and every single person said this is a good idea. So, and we were still victims of fraud. It's like, I get so frustrated when people say, oh, you didn't get advice. Well, we did. And we thought that when we asked the bank and told the bank manager some of the issues, that they would assess those issues and say, the risk might be a bit high. And they didn't. And I mean, what we didn't know is that our loan application was actually rejected. Why weren't we told that? And that's where the fraud comes in. It was actually the acting bank manager, in her wisdom, decided to put in a second loan application. So I was told by the Friday that, oh yeah, you've got the loan, it's not a problem, but we need to do a little bit with some of these documents. And that's when I stuffed up. I did things that I should never have done, but I was under the impression that our figures were good, that this was doable, and the way that they were all talking, everybody was talking, that this was a surefire thing, and of course there's no such thing. But, when the heart wants what the heart wants, a reason flies out the window. I mean, lots of people going through the family court can attest to that. But, yeah, so, and finding that information was so easy. It was in the bank's affidavit, and we were scuppered by the Anshan estoppel because my lawyer should have known that the information that there was a second loan application put in, and all of the details, like there was this one paragraph in some internal bank documents that said, although the above table shows that the customer cannot meet notational repayments, they've got property to sell. And it's like, why didn't my lawyer pick that up? That's a clincher right there. That there actually was a way to read the law down, that was fraud. That they had no intention of us being able to repay the loan. We were shy of a few quid on that. And it's because in my figures I'd stuffed up. And in the original bank loan application, the bank picked that up. The bank picked up that, oh, they've left off this big chunk, and that big chunk is what made it untenable. And of course, I thought it was in there. It was allowed for. It was going to work. So yeah, my mistake. But We still should have been told our loan application was denied, and we would have moved on without getting this loan. And yeah, hubby would be getting ready to retire, would have, had a high old life instead of, and then I wouldn't have a huge hex step because I wouldn't have done my degrees and I wouldn't have done the masters, and then I wouldn't be boring you guys either. So look, apparently I have one viewer. Hi. I am going to get really serious about this. Am I going to make money? I hope so. Is it going to take time? Yeah. But as I say, I want to reach more people and give some of my pearls of wisdom, having been there and done that, and all of the things that I wished I'd known. I'm happy to share all of that. But I'll see if I can get a Patreon account happening and start getting really good information on here. I had a whole bunch of videos done, ready to go on the channel, the YouTube channel, and I ended up deleting them because I just wasn't happy with how they were presented. I'm kind of a perfectionist, which is a bit silly because, nothing's perfect, least of all me. But I still want the information at a, reasonably professional level. I'm hoping to get a fair few things done. I'm just looking at the screen, so checking what's happening with YouTube. As I say, this is my first time live streaming on YouTube. I tried it on Facebook because I'm using OBS at the moment, and that was fun. But I'm very self-conscious. I don't like seeing myself on camera, which is why I'm thinking, I'll do the showing the screen bit and just let you see some of the information where I'm getting it from. It'd be really interesting to do a webinar or two on how to find a case law and how to make sure that it's relevant to what you're doing. That's also not legal advice. That's just how to. There's this really big chip on my shoulder, but it's not a chip about, I'm not good enough. It's this thing called the Legal Practice Board of Western Australia. And because I still have to follow the rules, because I am, an officer of the Court of Western Australia. So I have obligations. Even though I'm not practicing at the moment, I still have obligations. And I think that's where I'm disappointed with a lot of lawyers, because I think they forget that their paramount duty is to the court. So, you be honest to the court. If your client's ripped somebody off, how hard do you have to fight for them? And I can tell you right now, if you're working for one of the blue chip law firms, you have to fight really hard. And I know a few people who just quit because they couldn't do it. They couldn't reconcile their work and what they had to do for clients who were obviously lying, and keeping their moral compass. It's such a hard job being a lawyer. I'm not sure you understand how hard it is. It's a really fine balancing act, and every day you're looking at risk. There's a moral risk, there's ethical risks, there's even just confidentiality. If you're getting advice for your client, are you going to overstep the mark and, identify your client somehow? Because no one's supposed to know who your client is. Conflict of interest. It's a lot of... I've got this one thing where I'm helping a self-represented litigant, just organise their documents and story in a way that they can instruct a lawyer without, the massive legal fees. And there was a massive conflict of interest on the other side, like, the law firm. I'm sort of thinking, how could they not have mitigated that risk? It's really weird, really hard. So, I'm just putting some basics together for him to, go and take that to a lawyer and, get it all on a legal basis. So he's been self-representing, and it's a tough gig, really tough. So I don't know, what else do I need to say? Probably nothing. It's just all a bit fraught. See, I do a lot of ums and ahs. I'm not very good at this. Will I get better? Oh, I hope so. I really do. I hope so, for everybody's sake, who is going to come and find me, because, self-represented litigants are a huge cohort out there, because the law is expensive. And do you get justice when you go to court? Well, I didn't. I got the law, and, you're kind of... One of the things that annoys me about the law, and it's good in a way, because, there must be finality, you've got to be able to move on after a judgment. But when it's a miscarriage of justice and you paid good money to a lawyer to represent you, and then that lawyer just doesn't do their job, they do a half-assed job just to, my lawyer, I read through some of those documents, and the documents were really good. They were really good. The initial, the defence and all of that covered off on a lot of things. But it missed the critical thing, the fact that we couldn't afford it, and we didn't know that we couldn't afford it. And then at a mediation, which is one thing, I'll give this to you for free. When you go to a mediation, it's all confidential, so you can't talk about it afterwards. And what the banks in particular like to do is they hold off information that is critical to your case until the mediation, so that they can use it at mediation, confess their sins, but you can't use it in trial. And I'm there, but that didn't apply in this case, because we had the evidence. We had the evidence that there was a second loan application. We had the evidence that we couldn't afford the loan, and the bank knew it, and that they were going to sell our properties. We were asset rich and cash poor, and the bank knew it. So it's like, just be aware of these tricks, and if the other side gives you critical information, then you've got to think, what's a legitimate way that I've still got to get the evidence for that? Because they have to give you the evidence under disclosure, and you've got to be able to get it so that you get that into court, so that they don't get away with knowing full well that it was all dodgy as. And, that's... I remember the other side's lawyer saying, the first one we rejected because it just didn't make it, and the second one, it barely made it across the line. And the only difference was like 6 days between applications. It was like a really quick turnover. Must have been 8 days. Must have been 8 days between applications. And I'm there, how could our financial situation have changed so much in 8 days? And then it was still a really close call, and they still thought it was really risky. Like, really? And of course they got away with it. What they ended up settling for out of court was a pittance. And we ended up I was going to sue the law firm as well, and I was convinced by various players in the legal profession, just settle with them because you don't want to have 2 court cases going. And you know what? If you've got to choose between a court case, between a bank and a law firm, take on the law firm. At least they've got the insurance. And if you can prove that the law firm didn't do the argument because they had the evidence and didn't present it, so you were then blown out of the water by the ancient estoppel, then the law firm's at fault. And the bank's never going to give you a lot. You live and learn. You live and learn. So anyway, settled for an apology because they did screw us over. Boy, did they screw us over. And I'll probably end up doing an introductory video that gives my background and, how the hell I came up with the name Lady Rosa Legal Briefs. Because I am a lady. Unbelievable, I know, but I do have a title. I am the Lady Rosa. So, funny story. I'll tell it one day. Yeah, I'll probably put it on shortly because I do have to get videos on the old channel so that it's something to see. I'm also going to start up a website, so some of that stuff will end up on the website as well. As I say, hopefully I'll end up being able to find someone to supervise me, so that I can work as a lawyer, and that way the people that I'm preparing initial documents so that they can instruct a lawyer properly, or instruct a lawyer with all of the evidence that they would need, or at least, with all of the bits and pieces they have to let the lawyer know. And, I could then instruct a barrister for them, which is, all I do. I mean, there's a lot to be said for being able to say, well, I do have a supervisor, so all of my work has been checked, and I can give legit legal advice. I mean, I worked for 18 months at a law firm, but it was part-time, so it doesn't count as 18 months. So I still have a fair bit of supervision to have done. And it might never work out, so I might have to, let my practicing certificate lapse, which I think would be a shame. I worked really hard to be a lawyer, and I tried really hard to get another job, and it's just, I know I say I'm 21, but it's bleeding obvious I'm not. I know that. It's like, never mind. But we'll see how we go. It's all right. We'll get there. So I'm going to call it quits on it. I'll get started on stuff, and I'll figure out a really good timetable for when I will do a live stream, when I'll do a webinar. I'll set a proper timetable so that it's all happening, and I might even be able to figure out how to set the camera up to do the other angle so that it's not wide angle, because that's really bad. I know it's bad. It's all right. I shall get there. So I'll call it quits and catch you later.